Welcome, everyone, to the third Thursday meetup of the West Orlando WordPress Meetup Group. I'm Rob Watson, a co-organizer and host. West Orlando WordPress is an official WordPress meetup group and is affiliated with the main WordPress Orlando and WordCamp US meetup groups. Tonight's presenter is Geno Quiroz. Geno is a recognized online business strategist, an authority on the Divi Page Builder framework by Elegant Themes, a co-founder of ElegantMarketplace and DiviChat, and a pioneer in the Divi Product Ecosystem. In 2012, Geno launched his first consultancy, helping businesses and nonprofits become more efficient and effective in their back-office processes and systems. In 2014, he launched the Divi Tutorials Blog on Quiroz.co and began consulting other web designers and developers on mastering the Divi Theme Framework. In 2015, Geno founded Monterey Premier, a web design and development agency. Geno is also the president of the Marina Chamber of Commerce. He is husband to Vivian Quiroz and is passionate about Jesus, family, and building community. When not doing any of the above, you can find Geno blogging on a number of websites and managing his Divi community Facebook group, currently at over 16.2K members, and the Marina Community Facebook group, one of his local projects. We all get into the business of building WordPress sites for several different reasons. For some of us, it was a hobby. For others, a necessity, an accident, luck, and/or a childhood dream to run your own business. In this session, Geno will discuss the different phases of WordPress businesses he has gone through, such as building WordPress websites, offering digital marketing services, building WordPress products, running a multi-vendor marketplace for WordPress product developers, offering white label website design and development services, and being a monthly maintenance and hosting service provider. He will also touch on some of the basics of getting started as a WordPress website building business. And lastly, he will talk about finding contentment in your current lane, whatever that lane is. He'll throw in plenty of what would I have done differently and tips for each of those subtopics in different types of WordPress businesses. At this point, I'd like to invite everyone to mute your microphones for the presentation. Geno, thank you for being our presenter this evening. The time is now yours.
Thank you so much, Rob. This is you speak way too highly. Maybe I should have not sent that intro to you because I'm an expert at none of those things. But hopefully today during this conversation, I can at least share my experience and hopefully it helps others. My disclaimer right now is going to be, I'm not one of those guys that's going to tell you how to make 10 figures, 6 figures, 8 figures, any of those things. Because I'm not that person. I'm the person that is just happy to have a business and a career doing things that I love. And even if I can barely make it, even if we barely pay the bills, I'm stoked on that. So my goal here today is we've all got into WordPress and we've got into this world for a variety of reasons. And I'm not here to promote anything or to give you all the answers. I'm just here to share my experience. Hopefully it's helpful. And, but you guys, I know some of you are going to have on some, we're covering a lot of topics today. In fact, each of these topics deserves their own space and their own meeting. But hopefully what my goal is to share with you, like how I experienced it, why I did it, what I learned from it, what were my tips, and then kind of where I'm at right now. So hopefully this helps. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. I just saw your comment right now. By the way, everybody, leave a comment. I'm not going to be able to respond to every question, but if you put a comment in there, Rob's going to help me and Brian's going to help me kind of moderate the comments and questions. I'm actually hoping that the meat of this meeting is the questions and the comments and the feedback, not my talk. I'm just here to engage a conversation, but hopefully afterwards or in the middle of it, that we're going to be able to forge a conversation about WordPress businesses. And if everybody's still able to hear, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. Let me know if for any, so it's coming up right now, my slide deck, which is very bad. It's a very, very bad. Hopefully my talk is better than my slide deck. But is everybody hearing me okay right now? Or am I frozen?
This is Eugene. I hear you loud and clear.
We all muted. We can't tell you, so we're all muted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You guys are pros. That's why. All right. So, again, as Rob pointed out, we get into the business of building WordPress websites for several different reasons. And, you know, here's my statement here on the screen. But what I'm going to tell you is, you know, for me, it was always a passion. Like when I was in my 20s, you know, I always, it was a passion of mine to just be able to put my artwork and my stuff on the web. So that's why I got into it. Eventually, I got into, you know, I wasn't a coder. I was more of a graphic designer, and I did artwork. In fact, some of you might relate to this, but I was a graffiti guy. I was into like doing artwork and graffiti artwork, and I just wanted to be able to post it online and share it with the world. This was in the 90s, and I was in my 20s during that time, and that's why I jumped into it. But I quickly learned that you can actually start a business. You can actually have a career doing this, even if it's just a passion. And so that's kind of why I got into it. And I went through several phases. I went from being just a freelancer to like wanting to grow an agency, wanting to you know, like do something big. Did courses, did products, did a bunch of things. But I think the point of my message today is coming back to the genuine love of what you're doing, and how do we navigate that whole how do we become an agency, a big company, versus just becoming doing something that you love. And I think that's where I'm at. And so that's kind of, I'm going to share with you a bunch of stuff, different phases I went through. So let me go to the next slide here. And different types of WordPress business. Okay, so building WordPress websites, that's what we do. Offering digital marketing services. I plan on talking about how I decided to expand and do everything that, you know, we all feel that like pressure to do everything. That's SEO, that's content, that's social media, and that's, you know, just a number of different things. Building WordPress products. There was a point in my life where, you know, I'm inspired by WooCommerce and Lifter LMS and people who've taken their business and turned it into product development. I thought at one point in my life, that was the goal, you know, build a product. And so I attempted that, and I want to talk about that a little bit. Online courses. This wasn't on the original list I sent Brian, but I realized just the other day, like, man, I did online courses. So why not share about that as well? Because that's a big deal. And I think it's going to be a bigger deal in the coming up years. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Running a multi-vendor marketplace for WordPress products. So I did that. I'm going to talk about that. It's not something I'm doing anymore, but it was a great experience. White label design and development. That is what I'm doing right now, and I love it. And I hope to encourage some of you on what that looks like. Monthly maintenance and hosting. That's exactly what I'm doing right now, and I'm focusing on. So we're going to get into that. So without further ado, let's get started. Building WordPress websites. So for those of you on this call right now listening, or going to be listening later on to the recorded version, this is where we all start. I think we love building websites. We got into WordPress. I was an old school kind of HTML guy, build your own website. I wasn't a developer, but I knew how to find HTML templates and modify them. We all know the story, you know, using Microsoft Front Page and Dreamweaver and some of those other tools. But eventually, and I was afraid of WordPress because I was like, WordPress is so limiting. It is I don't have the freedom to do what I want to do. That was my thought, right? Then I got into WordPress and I realized, wow, they give me more freedom than anything else, than any other platform, and using HTML or whatever. So I fell in love. So that's where I started, and that's where I am right now. I love building WordPress websites. That's all I build. I decided I'm not going to do any other types of websites other than WordPress, because the community is huge. The people are great. I mean, you guys are in this group, so you know. But I loved it, and I loved learning. I loved that there was so many ways to learn how to manipulate and customize your websites using WordPress. So if anybody's getting started with, like, if you have a passion for building websites, WordPress is the way to go. Open source, open community. I'm a big advocate for open source. We can talk more about that later, but even now to this day, I have people like telling me about, Webflow and other things like Wix and stuff. And I'm a diehard open source fan, because the community is huge. So building WordPress websites, that's my passion. That's where and we're going to come back around to this by the end of this call. But pros, what are some of the pros for this? For me is you don't have to get bored with the same old routine. So I love WordPress because every project is different. So WordPress is a great platform, but every project, every website I've built has been different. Whether it's WooCommerce or bringing in other plugins, it's just, I don't get bored doing the same old thing. Every website that I personally work on has been helpful for my growth and my learning. And I love that. And there's people out there that are going to support me doing that. Another pro, you grow in your web development skills. This is the thing, we get into this, many people get into this because they're graphic designers and they're visual people. And WordPress allows you to learn how to become a developer, learn how to use CSS, and get into your uncomfortable zone. And that's why I love WordPress. That's why I love open source. It's huge. And you can't find that with HubSpot or Wix or any of those other platforms. I love them. They're great, but those are my pros for WordPress. The other pro I have is usually higher margins than most other services. And it's true, because as you get into WordPress and you begin to understand the dynamics and the community, you're going to find that you're going to be able to have higher margins than just doing HTML yourself. WordPress is great. It's entry level, but then it's also advanced. And so I think most people think of WordPress as, entry level. That's it. But it's not. You can learn a lot, do a lot, and become a developer using WordPress. So no matter what people are saying on the forefront, just know that it really is a platform that allows you to come in entry level but grow. The other thing I want to point out is cons. What are the cons? Well, WordPress is a crowded market, right? You know that. You're hearing that. There's a lot of competition out there, but although it's competitive, there's a term we use in the Divi community called, what's the word? Co-opetition. And that is, we all kind of build products that are the same. We have communities that are the same. We do the same work, but we encourage each other. We support each other. We promote each other. And that's rare in outside of WordPress. That's rare, but the people in WordPress get that. And so that's why we promote each other. My biggest supporters are my competitors. And I'll go on a podcast and they will tell me the same thing. Geno, you have always been my biggest competitor. And I will say, like to Josh Hall, so have you. and that's great, because that's what WordPress is all about. It's about community. It's about encouraging, and the market's huge. The market's huge. Don't worry about like what people are, and they're going to take your business. They're going to steal you. I go and check my copyright statistics on a regular basis, and there's dozens of people out there that are copying my content, copying my website. But you know what? I stopped complaining about that, because they're just growing. They're just learning. And you know what? I'm actually at a point where let them steal my content. I don't care anymore, because if it helps them create a business and I'm doing okay, if they can start their own business, and they may be in the Philippines, Taiwan, China, it doesn't matter where you are. Let's encourage that growth, because they have a huge market. I have a huge market here in California. They have a huge market. We all have a huge market. So encourage that. Co-opetition. That's not my phrase. That's a DiviChat phrase. What would I do differently? I might have established my pricing a little bit higher early on. I was charging $25 an hour, which is fine, but here in California where I live, that's not reasonable. And people would tell me, raise your rates, and now we're at $150 an hour. And I wish I would have started that sooner. But it's all good. We all have to kind of figure out how to raise your rates, how to grow, but don't underprice yourself. That's my, if I were to do something differently, I wish I would have priced myself higher a little bit early on. What would I do differently in this phase? Create a blog to assert my authority. I didn't do this right off the bat, but creating a blog actually ended up blowing up my business. So I was helping people in Facebook groups how to do things, but it wasn't until I created a blog, and I'm not a writer. I'm not philosophical or anything like that, but I learned, and I started, my first blogs were that way. Like, what's my philosophy? How do you do accounting? How do you do business? And then I started somebody asked me to do a tutorial on a particular thing using Divi. So I did that, put it on the blog, got tons of hits. And I was like, well, I can do tutorials. That's pretty easy. Like, I'm not a good writer, but I could take screenshots and put my stuff up there. Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And that blew up my business. So I wish I would have created a blog sooner. And my advice is to you right now, my tip would be create a blog. And you know what? We're all in this business because we're not social, right? Most of us hate that part of it, and we're going to get into this a little bit later as well. But blog, that's my thing. Blog, do it. Just do it. Figure out where your voice is. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Find your niche. Find out where you fit in. For me, I realized I wasn't an all-around great WordPress guy, but I did know Divi. I knew the theme I was working with. Maybe it's Oxygen. Maybe it's Beaver Builder. It doesn't matter what it is, but when you find your niche and you start working in that niche, it will benefit you. And I wish I would have learned that sooner. I didn't. My thought was, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. My eggs should be spread out along the whole internet building world, but it all came back down to Divi for me, and all my customers are Divi users. And so anyways, find your niche. Moving on. Offering digital marketing services. So the point of this part of the message is, I was, what's the right word? I can't think of the right word, but I felt like for me to be legitimate, I had to offer everything. And this includes, social media services, SEO services, content marketing services. I felt like if I was going to be a good agency owner, I had to do all these things. I wanted to be the one-stop shop for all digital media marketing services. I think you all relate to this. So I did. And what I did was because I didn't know all those areas, I relied on my subcontractors, and I found subcontractors that I could hire and take care of social media, take care of SEO, and do all those things. And all I had to do was just kind of oversee all that. And it went great. But what I learned was, because I wasn't very educated in certain groups like SEO and stuff like that, that our services started dropping, our service levels started dropping, and I knew it, and I saw it, and I felt bad that my customers who loved me, trusted me, respected me, they realized, like, hey, Geno, we love you, but this SEO service is horrible. Your content writing is horrible. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to go. And that kind of broke me a little bit. That was a hard place to be. So again, moving fast here, this is a lot of content, and we could do we could cover like each one of these topics for like an hour each. So I'm going to move past that. What were some of the pros? The pros for me were I got to work with different developers and people in the industry, and I learned a lot. I wish I would have had more time to work with them. But what I did was I just hired them and expected them to take care of that part of the business for me. The pro was these were very solid people I should have learned more from. Another pro would be, well, the pros, it increased our revenues. Our revenues grew. I mean, we went from doing monthly maintenance at $40 a month to $5,000 a month. I mean, that was great because they were hiring us to do SEO and all that stuff. And I had to, I paid my vendors, but the margins, I made sure the margins, were really beneficial for us. It was awesome. That part was awesome. And the other pro was I learned on the job. I learned about these services. I wish I would have learned before I sold these services, but I was stoked to learn about how to do SEO, how to do content marketing, how to do even blogs. I mean, that was a big deal for me, and I love that. The cons, well, I wish I was better at managing these people I contracted out to. I wish I knew more about SEO before I hired SEO people. It's hard. And then the other thing was it was hard to find talent locally. And I think we're all facing that right now. And so I did rely a lot on outsourcing outside of the States. And that was heavy because I learned that I have to be a better manager. I wish I would have had more processes in place, more procedures in place, more of who we are, what we stand for, what we do. So that way I don't have to go back and explain that to people that were that I was hiring. So those are some of the cons of that. What would I do differently? I probably would have put a procedure and process and procedure kind of online manual in place. I have that now, and I use that for like Monterey Premier and the Chamber of Commerce, which I'm a president of here locally in Monterey. How to jump in and kind of learn how to do these things. And again, that's where a LMS system is going to come in very handy for you guys. So learn how to use LMS. We're going to talk about that later. And I'm probably running out of time. So I'm going to jump to the next one. But those are some of the tips I would have about this particular digital marketing services is be ready. If you're going to do all that, you should really know how to manage all that. And if you don't, learn, put procedures in place so that way there's a steady flow of how the people you're hiring are taking care of your customers. That's kind of my tip on that one. Next, running online courses. So I just threw this in last minute because I just remembered that just last night I did this. And this is actually, I'm throwing this in because it's important because I think many of our clients and you guys, this is a great opportunity for us to share what we know. Everybody's going to be turning to online courses. So what I did was a couple years ago, I created an online course for using Divi. And I did a course. My course was how to build a website using Divi. It was a great course. I made some good money, and it was good. But the pros were it was great recurring income. I can post up maybe I did 20 videos. I probably put about 40 hours into it. It was a lot of work. But it was one course, and it had several modules. I used Lifter LMS. I'm a big fan of Lifter LMS. I'm friends with the founders and stuff, so that was my only go-to. So I'm not going to promote anybody else, but that's biased, I know. I loved it because it allowed me to create my own course on my own website, and I made good recurring income on that. The downside, though, and I'm going to jump right to the con, is it was not evergreen. So if you're going to do courses, and this is what I do differently, I would do a course that is not based on like today's software. So Divi is great. Maybe it's Beaver Builder, Oxygen, whatever platform you use. I learned that because it changes so quickly, and I wanted to evolve. I want Divi to grow. I wanted to change, but my course, I could not keep up with it. I can't. In fact, we'll get into this with product development. I can't keep up with how fast they're moving. I want them to move fast. So, but how do I change my content, my courses to be evergreen? And actually, this goes into my blogging because my articles are kind of outdated now. And I used to get a ton of traffic, but I don't anymore because it's hard to keep up. So anyways, I think what would I do differently is, and my tip would be, do your courses evergreen. Evergreen basically means it's not static. So for example, doing stuff on leadership is more evergreen than doing stuff specifically on how to use a software. So while it was great for me, it's hard to keep up. So I'm moving towards evergreen content a little bit more than others. So that's kind of how I would do things differently. Okay, so building WordPress products. And if anybody wants to chime in and interrupt me or stop me, just do it. Hopefully my internet connection hasn't gone out. You guys are still hearing me. But
everything's fine. We hear you.
That's what I need to hear, Rob. So the next one is building WordPress products. So again, I mentioned before, I was inspired by the folks at WooCommerce. They went from building websites to building products. And then Lifter LMS, I ran into a guy that was one of the leaders of the company here at a local meetup. And it was a Christian fellowship. It wasn't a WordPress meetup. But he was telling me, hey, you do WordPress stuff? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, we do too. And this is what we're doing. And it was so cool because he told me we're moving away from, we're creating a product, but we want to do the WooCommerce kind of thing where it's free. Lifter LMS is free. And then you build a world of products around it that people can add on and buy into. And I was so inspired by that. I'm going to mention Chris Badgett. Is still an inspiration for me. He still is. He's amazing. He's one of the leaders there at the group. All the leaders there that Lifter LMS are just, an inspiration to me. And their whole idea of moving from building websites to products. So I went into that realm. I started building Divi products because I was in the Divi community. And I was one of the first ones to create a premium child theme that could be sold. And I sold mine at $150 a piece. And then I did a plugin as well. And then it was great. And I loved it because, one, it really helped me. It really increased my traffic. It really helped me. Most of my customers came to me after that saying, hey, you build Divi products? We love Divi, but you build products. We want somebody like you who knows products that can build them to work for us. Will you be a white label partner? And I was like, well, what's white label? And they're like, well, we want to hire you to build our websites, but we want to tell our clients that it's from us. And that came out of me doing these products. And so some of the pros, let me jump here to my notes. Pros, recurring revenue streams. So if you build products, yeah, that's the main, I think, benefit by building products is the recurring revenue from your customers. You can actually literally watch the sales roll in, and that was great for us. That was a great season for us. We made a lot of money doing products, and that was awesome. But I'm going to jump to the cons here is customer support. If you're a web developer that is not into dealing with people all the time, then maybe this isn't a good pick. For me, I hated customers. I'm going to be straight up. I know there's customers probably watching this or will be watching this, but I hated customer support. I hated dealing with all the problems, all the updates. I had a team, of course. I had developers and stuff, but it really got to a point where for me, it wasn't my passion. It was great recurring revenue, but it wasn't my passion. I did not want to deal with customer support. I want to build. I want to create. And that kind of bogged me down a little bit. And so what would I do differently? If I were to get back in the products, I would hire a manager who knows this stuff, like customer support and dealing with those issues, managing the developers who are monitoring and maintaining the product. I didn't have it in me to do that. So that's what I would do differently. I think WordPress products are great. It's still there. Just for me personally, it's not a passion. And so that's going to kind of lead me to the next one. Running a multi-vendor marketplace for WordPress product developers. So I built products. That was great. And then I realized like there was an opportunity to create a multi-vendor marketplace because Divi did not have that yet. Elegant Themes, I should say. And there was one that I created called Elegant Marketplace that was my vision. And I pulled some people together to create this marketplace where people like us can sell Divi products. That was kind of foreign, even though there were other, page builders that were doing something similar. Most people said, hey, Geno, you're trying to compete against Envato. That's not good. You're not going to do well. I said, you know what? Elegant Themes has something. Let's create this marketplace. Let's do something different. Who cares what Envato or all those people are going to say? Let's do it. And we did it. And it actually, even Nick Roach over at Elegant Themes was like, why are you going to go do this, Geno? I don't think it makes sense. And I said, well, here's why I think it makes sense. It's because there's all these people that love Divi. They love the product. They want to create products, and they did. And it was very successful. And with Elegant Marketplace, things kind of went in a different direction. And so I created Monterey Premier's Marketplace, Divi Marketplace, and it was awesome. And my developer, Jerry, my one of my best friends, told me, why are we doing this? Because the margins are low and you're not really passionate about it. And for me back then, it was like, well, the traffic was great. I mean, it was amazing. So if you want to draw traffic, thinking about doing a marketplace where you're selling products, I mean, it was a great experience for us. We had 80 plus products and 30 plus developers in this. It was wonderful. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about building products, about managing the products and the customers. And I got a lot of customer service issues that would go through me because of the products we're selling on our marketplace. So I would say that it was wonderful watching the sales roll in, watching the growth of our website. The cons were, again, I was just not passionate about it. It wasn't that great of a deal for me. So eventually I burnt out on it. What would I do differently? I would probably build a separate multi-site for the marketplace. So when I did this originally, I did it on my WordPress website, MontereyPremier.com. And I wish I would have done a multi-site for this, because that way it would have been separate, because there were so many customers and subscribers that and developers and affiliates and all that stuff that really I should have kept on a separate website, because now that I moved away from that, I'm still dealing with a lot of that. My site's really slow because of all the stuff that I did on my site instead of doing it on a multi-site. So another thing I would do differently is probably consider easy digital downloads instead of WooCommerce. I'm a big WooCommerce fan, and I love how it worked for me. I use a lot of WooCommerce add-ons and tools, but I think easy digital downloads would have been easier for me selling digital products for subscribers and people who are going to be paying annually and stuff like that. I probably should have gone that route. I wish I would have had a better vendor management system in place, in that I was just accepting everybody. I was managing it, but I wasn't really managing it. I would just, yeah, you want to join? Let's do it. And I wish I would have had somebody who knew more about managing vendors and affiliates and all that stuff. It was a bit too much for me. So if you're going to go that route, as I love it, I think it's a great route to go, but consider managing that kind of system. And if that's something you're interested in, if it's not, hire somebody else to do it before you get into it. Great traffic, great SEO. And if I had somebody that was on board locally that said, I'm going to run this for you, Geno, I would still be doing it, but I haven't found that person yet. Next, white label design and development. This is where I'm at right now. I love this. It is my bread and butter. And what white label design and development is for me is, like I said earlier, I had a client reach out to me and said, Geno, I found you because you built products, you built Divi products, you have child themes, and yours are the most expensive, yours are the premier. And I purposely did that. I know mine weren't better than the others, but I charged higher than everybody else. And that's going to go into pricing and marketing and that kind of stuff. My child themes were $175 a piece, and the next closest one was $150. And that was great. Imagine doing like 2 or 3 sales of those a week, just for a product you already built. That's great. That's a few $100 a week. Turns out to be a couple thousand a month. But what the bigger benefit was when people reached out to me saying, hey, Geno, we see what you're doing. Can you, so Jameson, for example, was a marketing agency, and they loved Divi. They loved that, and they were using that but their designers got, basically they were tired of doing the same design over and over again. So they needed to hire somebody that could build new designs, but give it over to them to manage. And I was like, well, I'm in America, I'm in California, so I can't compete with white label partners overseas. They're going to charge you $5 an hour. I'm going to charge you $150 an hour. I don't know how I can compete. And I was surprised to find out that they didn't care, because they were tired of dealing with the same issues that we deal with when we're working with people that maybe have whether it's time-related issues or conversation. Or what I found was that many of my clients, my white label partners, were actually, they hired people in their community. And so when I had an issue and I asked them to help me fix it, they had to go find their person, and that person had to go find that person. And that might be several towns, away, and they might be having a flood or have no power, and I might not hear back from them for a couple of weeks. So that's what all my clients were facing. So how do we change that? So being a white label partner allowed me to service them, be available for them, be here for them, be a consultant. But I had to learn how to manage my own developers and my team. So that, I think that would be, I guess I'm jumping ahead here. That would be what would I do differently, or what are my tips for you? But the pros, just to kind of talk about the pros of this, is the biggest pro is I don't have to go looking for customers. They're providing me the customers. Let me jump back over here. They're doing all the marketing for me. They are the ones that are coming to me once a month saying, I have a new client. That's cool. All right, let's jump on a call with them. I'm not going out there chasing new customers. This changed everything for me. This changed everything in that no more feast or famine, because these people are going, as long as I partner with them, and that's how me and Rob met, actually. I was his partner, and I helped him with a couple of his clients' websites. But my biggest customers are the white label partners that send me work on a regular basis. I have John Wheeler out in Ohio. In fact, we'll go into monthly maintenance pretty soon, but two of my biggest clients were in Texas. They eventually gave me their business because they decided to get out of it, and I gained another $2,000 a month in monthly maintenance clients just because they wanted out, but they trusted me because I built their websites, and so they sold me their business. And so a lot of benefits to the white label design and development. Yeah, we don't get our name on the bottom of the website for each of these, but I do share them personally. Like, I can't put them on my website. They're not mine, but some of my best projects, some of my greatest projects are with white label design and development and those clients. And I wish I could share just some of the work I've done with them. Some I can, some I can't. So pros, cons, what would I do differently? I would say this. My tip is that I'm going to round all this up. Pros, you don't have to do marketing. Cons, you can't put the work you do on your website. What would I do differently? I would say I wish I would have considered this sooner. And tips, just go for it. Reach out to other bigger agencies and do the work for them. And that's my only tip for that one. Monthly maintenance and hosting. So this is a kind of a new one for me. I avoided this for the longest time because, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I know what a pain in the butt hosting was. I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want people contacting me for hosting issues, so I avoided it for the longest time. Then I started doing it for a couple clients, and still I was I still relied on the hosting companies, and wasn't too happy. But when one of my clients reached out to me and said, "Hey, Geno, I'm getting rid of my business. Can you take on these 20 clients, monthly maintenance clients?" I'm like, yeah, sure. And I took it on, changed my hosting. I'm going with Flywheel's agency plan right now. I do want to kind of at the end of this share some tips on some of the services I'm using and plugins and stuff. So I looked at the Flywheel because I was working with that with another company, and the plan is great. I mean, they take care of everything. I work with them, but it allowed me to take on these 20 businesses to maintain, which kind of brought me up to about $1,000 a month in income, just recurring income. Then another company a year later reached out to me in Texas about the same thing, and then I got another 10, 15 clients. Now all of a sudden, a majority of my income is monthly hosting and maintenance. And that's kind of where I'm all about right now, because I no longer want to, focus on just like what's my next job, where I'm going to make the next dollar, who's my next account, all that marketing stuff. So, anyways, it fell in my lap. I'm grateful for it. And that's where I'm at right now. So I'm going to move on here. Start your WordPress website building business. All right. I'm going to cut this short. Legalities, I'm not going to cover that because each zone is different, and you're going to have to talk to your local organizations and stuff like legalities. What do I need to do to start my own business? And every state, every city is different. privacy and terms and conditions. You know what? I talked with Brian about this, and it's a big deal. But I don't have all the answers either. So I kind of jumping screen here. I found this Termageddon, which is actually a great service that allows you to give your clients like updated terms and services and stuff, policies, procedures, and they will update it for you. And they actually have an agency plan. So like somebody like us can offer this as a resold service. But I'm because most of my clients haven't asked about this, I've not really gone into it, but this is the route I'm going. So Termageddon.com is something, hopefully Rob puts in the notes, but I think that might be something that you might be interested in if you're looking at, how do we deal with policies, procedures, terms and conditions. ADA compliance, I will say this, I'm not going to go into all that, but Brian made a great point when we talked the other day and he said ADA compliance is really just good SEO. Make sure that you're labeling all your images, you're making sure that if it's a readable device, the viewer is going to be able to understand it. So it really is just good SEO. So ADA compliance, is it an issue? Yes. What's our response to that? Good SEO. So if you know your SEO, you know how to take care of your pages and websites, you're going to be okay with that. Then jumping over here, and I know I don't have the full screen on, the 3 hats of freelancing, the CEO. So if you're going to do this, if you're going to jump into this business, remember, you're the CEO, you're also the CFO, and you're also the CSO. What is a CSO? You're the salesman. So, dude, I know most of you guys don't want to hear this because we're all developers and we don't like being social, but you're the chief sales officer. So own it. Wear that hat or hire somebody to wear that hat for you. CFO, most of you guys don't like that either. I don't, but you have to be your chief financial officer. That is super important. And I wish I would, I'm grateful that I learned that early on. But I think a lot of people in our field don't consider CFO and CSO as a hat you got to wear, but you really should. Accounting. So again, I'm going to kind of jump through this, but know your accounting. I'm grateful that when I was in ministry, I had to learn accounting in one of my jobs. I'm not an accounting guy. I'm not a math guy. I'm not even a school guy. But I had to learn accounting for a company I worked for. I had to learn bookkeeping, and I'm super grateful for that because I do all my own bookkeeping now. I work with my own tax people, and it helps me to know, like, I'm able to track what's making money, what's not making money, what do I got to cut loose. And I think most of us in this field of freelancing don't want to deal with that stuff, but we have to. So accounting is a big deal. Build your website. This whole point was just do it. There's so many of us in this field that are so hesitant to do it because we know so much. And so we refrain from building our own website, but just do it. Forget about SEO. Forget about all that stuff that we're teaching our customers. Just put it out there and learn along the way. Finding your voice, blog. Blog, you'll find your voice. Find your elevator pitch. You'll do that through blogging. Thinking about niche. Well, for me, I learned, I didn't know what my niche was. I learned that it was in the Divi community. Basically, I let the niche find me. Let the niche find you, whatever that is. I don't know what your niche is. It may be a particular field of service that you're offering, or maybe a product that you're using. It may be a community that you're speaking to. Whatever that niche is, own it, go for it, embrace it, and it's gonna. I've learned it's helped me. I've learned to embrace it. I'm a Divi guy. Most people don't like that, but I'm a Divi guy, and that's what makes my business, and that keeps me going. The other points I wanted to bring up, getting leads, and that's a big deal. Pricing. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about getting leads. I am going to jump to pricing because I think that's a big issue. And what I have here is, I hope to share this and put a link in here about where to find this. Yeah, I do have a link on my website that I will put here in the chat. But I'm not trying to get leads. So I'm working on changing like the whole dynamics of this, but I want you to have this guide. And even if I could just put this guide out there publicly for you guys, basically what it says is, I'm not a value-based pricing guy. I love it. I'm all for it. I'm not against it. But I have learned in my years that when I give my clients an estimate based on the amount of hours I plan on putting into a project, they are more ready to accept it because they say, okay, now that makes sense. 25 hours for the homepage, 5 hours for this, 6 hours for that, 7 hours for that. They okay, that's just like when I go to a mechanic. They can accept that. Versus I say, this website's going to cost you $10,000. Well, where's all that money going? And then they're gonna nickel and dime you. But when you give them an hourly estimate and they say, well, I want to change this, and I can say, well, that's great, that's another 5 hours, then it's much easier to keep from going out of scope. So this guide here it's only a couple pages, and it talks about like some of the different ways that you can put together your estimate. I even actually have some of the things you should keep in mind when you're creating an estimate. And the bottom line is this, is what is your worth? And then if it's going to take you 10 hours to do this particular piece, put that in the estimate. That's how you that's how you charge. That's how you do your pricing, is you figure out how long is it going to take you? How much is my time worth? Charge for that. And then if it goes over, then let them know and charge them for that. So I have a little guideline here, some things to consider about general development, plugins, final adjustments, the blog, WooCommerce, overhead. So hopefully this little booklet will help you guys out. So I plan on sharing that. Freely here. And then last but not least, I went way over. So I'm not going to go through the last slides. I'm going to share this with you, is finding contentment in your lane. So over the years, I've gone through all these different business practices, and it was the natural evolution, according to the world, as to where you should be. I've learned that, no, that's not where I should be. Where I should be is where I love doing what I'm doing. And that's brought me back full circle to, where am I at right now, Geno? I am in a place where I just want to help people. I want to build websites, but I don't want 20, 30 websites. I don't want to grow the agency. I just want to do what I love, and that's helping my clients and be creative. So to close this up, I would say this, and I'm going to stop presenting right now and say, do what you love to do. Figure out what that is. I guess the whole purpose of this hour-long conversation was, been there, done that, do what you love to do. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? So I know we're done. I'm going to open us up to questions. I'm going to be here available for anybody that wants to hang around and talk. But Rob, Brian, I'm handing this over to you.
Thank you so much, Geno. This was really fantastic. You covered so much ground. I think we could split all of this up into multiple engagements at some point. But really appreciate your time and all of the resources that you've shared. I've learned a ton, and I wish I had talked to you about this stuff, when I was starting my own agency. Maybe you hadn't learned those things yet, but really great. Thank you. Appreciate that.